The summer garden party was my mother's annual display of superiority and control. Every year it followed the same pattern, the same careful performance meant to remind everyone who she believed she was. White linen tablecloths were stretched perfectly across long tables placed beneath blooming magnolia trees. Crystal glasses sparkled in the afternoon sunlight, throwing reflections across the carefully trimmed lawn. Around 75 relatives wandered the garden, sipping drinks, admiring the decor, and praising my mother for her taste. None of them knew that I had been quietly paying for this entire estate since 2019. Nobody knew that part, and I had never corrected them. My daughter Emma sat beside me, her 8-year-old face glowing with excitement and curiosity. She had chosen her favorite yellow dress that morning, the one with tiny sunflowers embroidered along the hem. She kept smoothing the fabric with her hands, clearly proud of how it looked and eager to be included. Across from us sat my son David, 16 years old and perpetually observant. He looked uncomfortable in his button-down shirt, his shoulders tight, his eyes scanning the table as if he already sensed that something was about to go wrong. "This is so pretty, Mom," Emma whispered softly, reaching toward the tiered serving platter filled with delicate cucumber sandwiches and pastries. Before her fingers could touch the plate, my mother's hand shot forward and pulled the entire tray away. Her voice cut through the gentle conversation, like a blade. She announced that adopted children eat in the kitchen and that there were standards at her table. The silence was immediate and absolute. Forks paused in midair. Conversation stopped. Aunt Linda froze with her glass halfway to her lips. Emma's hand remained suspended over empty space, her fingers slowly curling inward as she looked down at them in confusion. She did not cry. Emma rarely cried. She had learned early in life that tears did not soften cruelty. They only encouraged it. I reached for my water glass, took a slow sip, and said nothing. My hands did not shake. They never did anymore. "Margaret," Uncle Tom ventured carefully from the end of the table, asking if that was not a bit harsh. My mother turned toward him with practiced indignation and said she was teaching appropriate boundaries. She insisted that Emma needed to understand her place in the family and reminded everyone that Emma was not blood. David's jaw tightened visibly. I caught his eye and gave him the smallest shake of my head. "Not yet," my mother continued, clearly emboldened by the attention and the audience. She spoke loudly about how expensive the party was and how costly the estate was to maintain. She said she could not allow random children to think they were entitled to the same treatment as real family members. My sister Claire spoke quietly, pointing out that Emma was only 8 years old. My mother snapped back that Emma needed to learn. She declared that she refused to pretend blood did not matter. She accused me of making the wrong choices by adopting instead of giving her proper biological grandchildren. She said actions have consequences. Emma's shoulders curled inward slightly. That small collapse of her posture did something to my carefully maintained composure, but I held myself together as I always had. I reminded my mother calmly that Emma was her granddaughter. She dismissed me and accused me of insulting her intelligence. She mocked my work, claiming I barely scraped by at a nonprofit job and lived in a tiny apartment while depending on family generosity. What she did not know was that the apartment was an investment property I owned and rented out. I stayed there occasionally to maintain the illusion. My actual home was a 4-bedroom house across town that none of my family had ever visited. David finally spoke, his voice tight, telling my mother she should stop. She shut him down immediately, declaring that she would speak however she wanted in her own home. The irony was painful. David looked at me, silently asking the question he had carried for 2 years since accidentally discovering the documents. When would I tell them? Watching Emma sit quietly with her hands folded in her lap, watching her try to disappear at a table where she should have felt safe, changed something inside me. I gave David the slightest nod. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the stone patio. The sound cut through the garden as he asked if he should tell everyone who really paid for the house. The color drained from my mother's face. Conversation stopped. Dozens of relatives turned to stare. She ordered him to sit down, but her voice had lost its authority. David refused. He said she had just humiliated his sister. He told her it was not actually her house anymore. She tried to deny it, but David continued. He explained that I had been paying the mortgage since his grandfather died. He revealed that she had been 3 months away from foreclosure in 2019, and that I had refinanced the property under my name to save it. Shock rippled through the table. I confirmed everything calmly. I explained the medical bills, the business loans, and the missed mortgage payments. I told them about the phone call in the middle of the night when she begged for help. I revealed the truth about my work, my foundation, my income, and the years I spent quietly supporting everyone while being labeled the family disappointment. I explained why I lived simply, why I drove an old car, and why I stopped correcting their assumptions. I explained that it was easier to be underestimated than constantly dismissed. When Emma asked if I owned Grandma's house, I told her yes. I reminded her that she belonged exactly where she was. When my mother tried to regain control, I stopped her. I made it clear that this conversation would happen in front of everyone. I set boundaries, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Emma mattered. Respect mattered. Before leaving, I demanded an apology for my daughter. My mother finally gave one. This time, it sounded real. We stood together and walked away, my children and I, leaving the garden, the party, and the house I owned behind us. As we drove away, my phone buzzed with calls and messages. I ignored them all. For the first time in years, I felt peace.